Best say he had everything to live for. Now they're determined to see that he did not die in vain. Harold Dow has the story.
21-year-old Ron Settles was a star running back for California State University Long Beach, the fifth leading rusher in the school's history. Pro teams like the Dallas Cowboys and Seattle Seahawks showed interest, telling him to stay healthy. But those dreams were never to be realized. 3 months ago, Ron Settles was driving down this street on his way to work. According to the police report, he was doing 47 in a 25-mile-an-hour zone. When stopped, the police officers claimed Settles resisted arrest and attempted to pull a knife. Police officials admit that the suspect was repeatedly hit in the head as he was being booked. He was eventually taken to the Signal Hill police station and confined to this jail cell where police reported Settles committed suicide by hanging himself. His parents refused to believe it and charged foul play.
I knew he didn't do it. I'll go to my grave saying he did not do it.
He did not take his own life.
He did not take his own life. He had too much to live for.
During a coroner's inquest, all 5 police personnel involved took the Fifth Amendment. After 9.5 days of testimony, the panel ruled 5-4 that Ron Settles died, quote, at the hands of another.
There is no doubt in my mind that this young man committed suicide. Absolutely no doubt. All the scientific evidence points to that fact.
It's ridiculous to think that this young man, with everything in the world to live for, would kill himself over some bogus, trumped-up charge.
The Settles family has already filed a $50 million damage claim against the city of Signal Hill. In addition, the family also plans to ask the Los Angeles County District Attorney to file criminal charges against those individuals the family believes were responsible for the death of their son. Harold Dow, CBS News, Signal Hill.
The Los Angeles County Attorney says he plans to investigate 5 more allegations of police brutality in the town of Signal Hill, California, for a total of 10 that he's now looking into. And such allegations are nothing new for Signal Hill. Harold Dow reports.
Last June, football star Ron Settles died in a Signal Hill, California jail cell. He'd been arrested for speeding. Police contend he hanged himself with a mattress cover, but a coroner's inquest ruled that Settles did not die by his own hand. But there are now charges that the Settles case was not an isolated incident, charges that it was part of a pattern of police brutality in Signal Hill. Records show 29 lawsuits against Signal Hill police in the last 13 years. Charges of false arrest, wrongful death, and brutality. 16 of those cases were settled out of court. Police officer Jerry Lee Brown is the man most often accused of brutality, named in 9 suits, including the Settles case. Neither he nor other police will comment on any of the cases, but Brown's lawyer denies the allegations.
Here's a man that has laid his life on the line. He's given 11 years to law enforcement into this community, and then to be tried and dissected by certain news media elements and be intimated that he's a murderer, a criminal, is just inexcusable.
There isn't that much brutality going on. Of course, everybody who gets a ticket is brutalized, according to the paper, and that's not true.
But critics charge that Signal Hill, a small oil town run for years by one family, has a long history of hiring police fired by other departments. And local reporters who've looked into the brutality charges claim police have warned them to back off.
Because at one point, the word was passed down to me through the reporter that he's one of the officers talking to off the record. At one point he said, tell Mary we still have more rope up here for her. Well, that's kind of sick.
Evidence in the Settles case will be brought before an investigative grand jury later this month. And District Attorney John Vandekamp says he has expanded his probe to include other allegations made against this city's police department. Harold Dow, CBS News, Signal Hill.
Again, this is Darnell and Helen Settles. When you first got the phone call from the police department saying that they had arrested your son and they told you that he had committed suicide, what thoughts went through your mind? Did you believe that?
Well, at the time that we received the call, I was away. I had just returned from Orange County. I happened to have stopped by the office to pick up my messages, and then I received a call from the police department, or sheriff department, which is Carson, and they said that they had some important information that they wanted to discuss with me. I was concerned at that time as to what type of information that was involved. So it went on to point out that it was very, very important. He didn't want to discuss it with me, and could I come home right away? I had no idea what was involved at this time. I asked if my wife was there. He said yes. And I then said, okay, I'll come on right away. I didn't ask if Ronnie was there, because then when he said she was here and that she was okay, I then assumed that it had to have been something that was dealing with him. I arrived at the residence, I'd say about 15 or 20 minutes later. I saw that the sheriff's car was parked in front of the drive, and I really got upset. I was wondering what really had happened. In my mind, I thought that he might have had some type of serious accident. I had no thought whatsoever that something like this had taken place.
And when they told you what had happened, that he committed suicide, what did you think? Did you believe that?
I, at the time, was totally in shock. I did not believe that he had done anything of that nature. What really had happened, before the officer could tell me that his statement was that he had committed suicide, my wife had yelled out and say, Ronnie's dead. At that time, I came across really kind of strange, because I couldn't believe this. I really couldn't believe it at all. So therefore, I looked to her. I went over. She was standing by the sink, and we kind of grabbed each other, and then he proceeded to tell me what had happened. No, I couldn't believe that it was suicide. There was no reason in my mind that he would do any such thing as that. Having grown up, we kind of grew up with him because we were quite young when we got married, and when we got married, the child came shortly thereafter. I couldn't believe that the things that we had taught him along the way would lead him in this direction. There was no reason for him to have been depressed. We had worked with him throughout his childhood. We had done, I think, the things that we were supposed to do. I find that we tried to give him all of the things that he needed and a few of the things that he wanted. So there was no reason for us to believe that.
What kind of an individual was he?
Excuse me.
Loving, caring, sharing type. Ronnie was the type child that loved the elderly, loved kids all the time. Kids would come here, you would think that they were his age, they'd ring the doorbell, and you would be looking for a person his age, and you look down and it's a kid, 5, 6 years old, and even younger. He would get the ball, and they'd be out in the street. He would play with them, this type thing. And he was just a person who loved life, had everything to live for. We, as I said, we prayed together, we stayed together, and we played together. When we had problems, we've always taught him that there's no problem too great to tell us, because inevitably it would end up on us anyway, regardless of what the problem was, and let us know first, rather than going to a friend. Let us know. We would solve it. And we've always had that communicative level going for us. Naturally, kids, I'm sure there are a few things that they won't tell you, but we talked just like he was one of us. And yet that element of respect was still, he knew parent-child, you know. He knew he was we were the adults and he was the child, and we were also the parents, but we're also friends through it all.
And while he was growing up, did you have occasion to talk with him about his rapport with police officers and what to do and how to conduct himself?
Of course.
We even had what you might call a discipline on police brutality, police respect, what to do if an officer stopped you, how this should be done. As a matter of fact, we even had a tour of the Long Beach Police Department when he was 7 years old. We took him down there just to show him what it meant or what it would be like to be incarcerated. We took him, he had a complete tour of the police facilities. And we talked about that at that time. This was his basics. We thought we were preparing him at that time for this. And we would continue to talk about this as he grew up. And he knew about what it was like down there. He knew how to respect officers. And he had demonstrated his abilities in these aspects all of the time until the night that, of course, I didn't get a call they happened to have appeared when they came. I did not receive a call at all from the police department. I asked at the time what the charges were. You know, I was in total shock when they told me that my son was dead. I couldn't believe it. And I said, well, what was he stopped for? They said speeding. And I said, what were the charges? They said assault with a deadly weapon. I asked at that time what type weapon, and I was told by someone in the coroner's office that it was a pistol. I didn't know until the next morning that it was a knife. The next morning we picked up the paper and there was this 9-inch blade knife. So from the get-go, you know, I knew he didn't do it. You know, I'll go to my grave saying he did not do it.
He did not take his own life.
He did not take his own life. He had too much to live for. He was just like us. And I'd like this go for the records also. If anything happens to us mysteriously, I did not do it.
Nor did I. I might add that in dealing with the police situation that I think that the question addressed, we had talked with him several times that if you're going to be confronted by the police force, remember that they are in authority and that you have to respect police authority. So therefore, we had talked to him many times about this. Not that we had a problem about it. It was more in tune with trying to educate him to the extent that he would understand that if he was stopped, what to do, how to protect himself, and how to respond. So I have no question in my mind as to what went down. It's just that I don't want to get into that phase of what possibly have gone down. I don't think that he responded in a way that would produce the type of things that they say took place. However, we were not there. And there were witnesses to the scene that said that some things took place. Now, what happened to cause him to do that, I really don't know. But it was not his makeup to be that kind of an individual.
And according to the test from the blood samples, it was not drugs. And this one thing that I was really concerned about was clearing his name. You know, I've often heard that a good name is better to be chosen than great riches. And with Ronnie, with this, all of this demoralization of his character really affected me. It really affected me because this was not my child that they would demonstrate, that they were describing, you know, and it really took its toll on me, on us. You know, after you have raised a child, he's never had any kind of record at all. And you conceive, you nurture, you train, you bring a child up for 21 years with an unblemished record. And then you find this, that hurts. No money could replace the void that we experienced in. No amount of money. And we're not even thinking of, you know, money, a money aspect of it. And we'll never be able to, our lives will never be the same again.
I'd like to add that we went through all of these trying times with him. When I say trying times, we're talking in terms of times that we spent with him from Little League up through Pop Warner, up through junior high, up through high school and into college. We were very in tune with what he was doing. That dealt with baseball and football. At one time, he wanted to even try to participate in basketball, but that was not enough time for that. We dealt with him based upon what he wanted to do. We didn't tell him that he had to do one thing or another. We were more in tune with trying to do what he wanted done, and we were in tune with trying to get him to do a good job at it. That includes school. Now, naturally, being a boy, they tend to get involved with their sports, so therefore they kind of get a little slack sometimes. We talked about that. Yeah, we talked about that. Thank you. He would get himself back in shape and go on and do what he had to do with the books academically. Then we would go right back to his sports, because this is what his life was all about, even though we instilled in him that, hey, sports is not the only thing. If you can't make it there are many other avenues that you can pursue. I'm involved in business, and we talked about that, and we were going to deal with that even after he got out of sports.
You know, the attorney representing the police department, Signal Hill Police Department, said that perhaps your son was a little despondent, being that this was his first arrest, and he was trying to obviously say why he thought that a suicide had been committed. And he said that he perhaps did not want to face you, didn't want to talk to you, and it was his first arrest, and that's why he did it. What's your response to that?
I would say that that's totally out of line. We had a built-in support system. We had no problems in dealing with his problems. As we all do, we all have problems somewhere in our lives. When we came to California, we came out here, and this might be rambling a little bit, but when we came to California, we came out here as two individuals. I came first, he came second. And then there were a lot of the other family members that followed behind. So we were kind of like the pioneers. And as a result of that, we developed an extended family. I think that's been mentioned before. Questions came up about what do you mean about extended family? A lot of the people that we know, a lot of the relatives that is out here now, live with us at some point or another. And in the process of doing so, they were just like our brothers and sisters, and they were just like his brothers and sisters. So if there was a problem, I think she had mentioned it earlier before, if there was a problem that he couldn't discuss with us, he could discuss it with them. So the idea of him being that despondent over the fact that he had a problem there, if he didn't want to discuss it with us, he could have discussed it with anyone else.
One had diversified interests in life itself and how to make it. He had ridden with his father in his car in real estate, on real estate cases. He sat in the office. He knew what business was like. He had other alternatives. Football wasn't just the only thing. And he knew that. And he was interested in that, those other areas of life. So it's no way that they're going to tell me that he was despondent over anything to the extent that he would take his own life.
The final outcome with the inquest obviously ruled in favor of it was a 5-4 decision, saying that perhaps he was killed by the hands of another. After hearing that, does it make you bitter at all? What are your feelings today?
May I respond to that? No, it does not make me bitter. What it makes me really realize that this is reality, and we are looking at a lot of sick people in control, and that's sad. That's sad for the nation. What we are fighting for now is not to bring Ronnie back. We have sense enough to, or we have the wisdom to accept the things that we can't change. And as I said, that void will forever be there. But what we are fighting for now is to help the others. Those people who are around with children, other people, you, myself, those who are riding in our own cars, who might be victims of the same circumstance. Money does not mean anything to us. It does not mean that much to us. What I'd like to do, which would be, I feel it would be something that Ronnie would like to see done, possibly to have a cultural center for youth, maybe with facilities for the aged, or nursery, and to help in those aspects, and for the church.
Senior citizens.
Senior citizens' home, or to help with our church facilities. Make it a better sanctuary.
I'd like to add, I don't feel bitterness as such. I do feel a lot of concern about how the system works. We find that in a situation like this, only those that happen to be surrounded by the right support group, that happen to be able to hire the right legal counsel, can only survive in the system, and that disturbs me.
You were fortunate enough to be able to do that.
Well,
Hopefully.
may I answer that? First of all, we had God as our leader. And when you have this, I feel that if you have God as your leader, you're surrounded by it's strange how we were surrounded by the most capable and competent people in their particular field of expertise. And this has really helped us, and all of the public concern and support. We feel, right now, we feel totally helpless and hurt. It's our support system that's keeping us going. No, we don't have any money. You know, we were able to contact these people, this type thing. But all of the money that we get out of it, you know, wouldn't help us with the hurt we feel.
One last question, that is, describing Ronnie as a football player, you've attended some of his football games.
No, not some of them.
All of them.
All of them.
Yes.
Baseball.
And baseball,
Yes.
too?
Yeah.
From Pop Warner.
Not just me, also
both of
her.
us.
He loved
And
baseball.
a lot of
he
the
loved
family.
football, too, didn't he?
Yeah, both.
Yes, loved it.
He even liked basketball. He just didn't have enough time to participate in basketball.
And the fact that his coach even told me today that he had some professional potential in professional football.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Was
and
he
I-
looking forward to that?
Yes. May I interject this? At the time he went to Cal State Long Beach, he had 6 other university offers, 4-year scholarships. And this is why we decided to give him the car in the first place, because he had earned it. We didn't have to pay any tuition, and we decided that whatever he wants in the line of a car, we would give it to him. And this is what we did.
And this was his choice of a
This
car.
was his choice of a car. You know, we tried to reward him when he reached his objectives. We set realistic goals for him. He set realistic goals for himself. And as he reached his goals, we would reward him, like any parent would do.
Absolutely.
What if you could say something to perhaps other people across the country who may potentially find themselves in this situation, what would you say?
I would say at this stage of the game, you try and give the child the right direction to travel, and you would support them in that direction. And then after that, if they should encounter the kind of a problem that we have encountered, then you seek out those that can be helpful, because it's very important. Going back to what you said earlier, we have a support system that is fantastic. It's composed of community leaders, ministers, our family, the extended family, and etc. As a result of that, we have gotten the kind of support that is necessary to deal with this type of a situation. But I want to point out that I think that the system has to be changed to the extent that a person, in the absence of those things that I just mentioned, will be able to deal with the court of law without the cost and without all of those things in order to get a fair trial.
And in spite of all the help he had, it still hasn't been easy.
It's still a tough fight.
No, and one
At this stage of the game, we have just left home plate, if we could relate it to a baseball game.
Yeah.
We only got to first base. We got to go all the way around and get back to home before we have a winner. And that's a long ways around.
And we realize this. We accept this fact. But one thing I'd like to say to the parents of the world, in training your child, when he has something to say, listen. You never know. That child might have something to say to you. Don't be too busy. We as mothers have to listen to what our children say to us. We have to be able to dissect it, digest it, and try to give them understanding so far as we know as to how, or the answer to the question. If we cannot do that, then find someone who can. Because I find that that's going to be the key, along with prayer. Other than prayer and trying to train your child in the way he should go, that's the only thing we have to hold on to now. The system I found, after sitting through 10 days of the inquest, I have found that there's a lot to learn. And that's about all I can say about that. There is a lot to learn. It's been an education within itself. I've been in school practically all of my life, and that has taught me more in 10 days than I've learned out of all of the years of the technical or you might say professional training that I've had.
Good point. Very good point.
You've already are going to follow through with the civil proceedings. What will you do next? Will you let it go at that?
No, we're going to go for both of the suits. We're going to go with the criminal and civil suit. We feel that at this stage of the game that somebody along the way have done some injustice. There is nothing that could happen that could return our son to us at this stage of the game, but we feel that we have lost the most precious thing that one can have, an only son. So therefore, we want them, as the policemen throughout the nation, to know that this should not happen again.
I might add that not only an only son, but an only child. That's the only one we had. I think the people at Signal Hill, the whole setup, I think that setup is incompetent.
You're talking about the police department?
I'm speaking of the police department. From Chief Dealey, I never met Wirt. I'd rather not. Chief Dealey down. Chief Dealey testified that he has been there 20 years. He is second in command, has a force of 26 men. And he does not know 26 people under him. What does that tell you about the setup itself? He saw a man on the floor dead, lying dead. He walked by, assumed he was dead, and kept walking. He didn't ask any questions. He went on to his office.
And he's talking about your son?
And he's talking about my son. Then when they called the paramedics, they had the paramedics come out. They sent 2 cars. Okay? They had ordered 2 cars. One car came with 2 people in it. The other car they called and canceled. The 2 people came in. They looked at him. He looked lifeless. Today I have to know what doctor pronounced him dead. So far as they're concerned, I guess he's still alive. We have not seen the doctor that signed the death certificate. Who pronounced him dead? What happened after that? There are so many unanswered questions even now. They said he refused to make a phone call. That was my question. They said he refused to. That is not our son. He did not make a phone call. He knew where to reach both my husband and myself. He did not make a phone call. Then later they said he tried to call. Again, another story I heard that he was to call after 6 o'clock. He knows I'm home every day at least by 3:30. So it wouldn't have been after 6 o'clock when he made the phone call, if allowed to make the phone call, in fact. There are a lot, as I said, of unanswered questions, of which we're still seeking. We'd like a complete investigation of the whole setup, not only the police department, but the city council on down.
Dealing with the phone call, I think about this. We had just somewhat left each other. I had talked to him about removing his car from the drive, and he says, okay, I'll let you out. And the last that I saw of him, he was running as the garage door was closing, and I was headed off to the doctor's office for an appointment. He knows where the doctor's office is, and he knew that when I left the doctor's office, I would be going to the office, which is very close by. As a matter of fact, it's probably about 8 or 10 blocks from Signal Hill Police Department. If he was going to call, I would think that he would have called there if he was allowed to do so. Some question came up as to whether he made a call, and I believe some statement was made that he did. He didn't call there. I wondered about that. It's a question in my mind whether he actually was allowed to make the call. I just don't think so, because even if I wasn't there, somebody would have been there. And if I had received the call, it would have been returned.
It's evidence that he was not allowed to make the call because, according to them, and I'm speaking to the police department, He said that they had no one who was qualified, not qualified, but
Yes, qualified.
certified, I guess I should say.
That was the correct word,
To
qualified.
take him to the phone. Can you imagine running a jail facility whereby you don't have a man on duty who is who has the certification to take an inmate to a telephone? Another thing that really disturbed me was we were not allowed to see our son from Tuesday. This happened on a Tuesday, about 2:30 in the afternoon. We were not allowed to see him until that Saturday, our son's body. When we saw that body, when we finally saw it, it was totally mutilated. He was supposed to have been beaten below the waistline. The scars, the mutilation, were not below the waistline. They were all on the head. The body was mutilated, as I said. He didn't even look like it's unrecognizable.
It was so badly beaten until we decided that we wouldn't allow the body to be seen until after the mortician had done some more work.
Cosmetic work.
I elected to join in with this gentleman to do the work, and that was really some trying times to be able to do some of the things that had to be done in order to get him in a presentable manner. I didn't discuss this with her at that time. I did at a later date because I didn't want her to share the same type of feelings that I had, but it had to be done.
Also, one other thing I'd like to mention is that Officer Jerry Lee Brown. And we understand that he was the arresting officer. However, he also cut him down. What happened? We want to know where he was during the time of the arrest and during the time that he came in to supposedly have helped cut him down.
Wow.
Also, the young lady that was in the car was also the same lady that was in the car with him 6 years ago when a similar incident occurred.
Okay.
You both have a lot of questions. Is there a lot of unanswered?
There are a lot of unanswered
no question about it. But see, the thing that you have to remember when you're hiding behind the fifth, that takes out a lot of information that normally you would hear or normally the attorney could develop.
I'd like to say one other thing to that. If you can tell the truth, you can say that 999 times the same way. If you're lying, I would take the fifth. I wouldn't be here if I had something to hide. Our lives have always been an open book.
Your point's well taken.
Thank you.